We're going to take a look at how we can work with tab documents in Photoshop. I'm going to select all three of these images and then use the keyboard shortcut Command O in order to open them. We can see that the images open as tabs, just like I'm sure you're familiar when you open up multiple windows in a browser. And if I want to select any of the images, all I need to do is click on the tab for that image. I can also drag one of the tabs in order to reorder them if I want to, and I could click on any of the tabs and drag it into the image area here in order to float that window. If I drag out a second tab, I can go ahead and float that window as well, and in fact I can even group together floating windows by selecting one and then dragging it on top of the other until I get that sign outline around the entire image. If I wanted to put these two grouped floating windows back with the original tabs up here, I can select from this the top bar area, click and drag that into the tabbed area, and now they will all be tabbed again. Let me go ahead and drag out this image again in order to float it. The problem with floating an image is that if I then select a tab document, you'll notice that the floating image is hidden. If I ever need to find that floating image, I can go underneath the window menu. And all the way down here at the very bottom, it will list all of my open documents, so I could select the tree and rock in order to have that floating window pop up to the front. For now, I'll go ahead and tab that back with the other documents. If I want to quickly cycle through my open documents, I can use the keyboard shortcut Control Tab, and that's the same keyboard shortcut on Windows. If I've got multiple floating documents, I can also use Window menu and then choose Arrange and select Consolidate All to Tabs, and the floating documents become tab documents. In order to close my documents, I can click on the check mark to close it, or if I want to close the active document, which in this case is this image, I could choose File and then Close. If I have a number of different documents, I can choose Close All, and that will close them all at one time. I personally really appreciate the tab panels, and I often work in that space because I know exactly where my open documents are, and I know that none of them are accidentally being hidden behind others. To work on different projects, it can be helpful to see more than one image at a time in Photoshop. In Bridge, I'll select all three of these images and use the keyboard shortcut Command O in order to open them all in Photoshop. Now, in order to see more than one document at a time, I can use the Window menu and choose Arrange, and then I can use any of these different options. Because I only have 3 images open, you'll notice that the 4 up and 6 up are grayed out. So if I wanted to see 3 up stacked, I certainly could. Here we can see all 3 images at one time. Or if I wanted to arrange them so that I saw 2 up vertical, because there's 3 images open, when I choose this, you'll notice that this first panel here on the left actually has 2 images nested inside of it. If I wanted to move one, I could select the tab, drag it over, and then nest it with the other one. If I select the tree and rock image and I want to view only that image, I'll select Window and then Arrange, and this time I'll choose to consolidate the tabs. Now I'll probably change the viewing options with the arrangement options of my open documents at least 15 to 20 times a day when I'm compositing images together. So what I would do is add a keyboard shortcut for these. Under the Edit menu, I'll select Keyboard Shortcuts, and then I'll make sure that I'm assigning my keyboard shortcut to my application menu. I'll scroll down until I see the Window menu, click on the triangle so that I can see all of the different options, and I'll scroll down to these 2 options here, the Consolidate All to Tabs and to Tile. I'll add a keyboard shortcut to Tile. In this case, I'll use Command Shift T, and I'll just type that in, and it tells me that it's going to remove the shortcut from Edit, Transform, again. But I'm okay with that because I'm going to use this shortcut many times every day, so I'll accept that. And then I'm going to add a shortcut to Consolidate All to Tabs. In this case, I'll use Command Shift R. Again, it's going to have to remove that from other command, but I'm okay because I'll use consolidate to tabs much more than filter lens correction. I'll go ahead and accept that, and the reason that I'm using these two keyboard shortcuts is that they're right next to each other on the keyboard. So when I use Command Shift T to tile, I can remember that for tile. And when I use Command Shift R, that's going to return me to a single view of a single image. And when I use Command Shift R, that's going to return me to a single view of a single image. So I use that to consolidate all two tabs. And now let's go ahead and test out those keyboard shortcuts. A Command Shift T will tile all of my images, and Command Shift R will go ahead and return to the single image. And in case I forget what keyboard shortcuts I assign, if we go under the window menu and use the arrange, you can see here that Photoshop has added those keyboard shortcuts next to consolidate all two tabs and next to tile. So there you go. I think you can see how much time I can save. Instead of having to select the menu item here, I can just use the keyboard shortcut Command Shift T and Command Shift R. I'm such a huge fan of the tab documents in Photoshop that it's hard for me to see why anyone would want to turn them off, but that's probably because Photoshop arranges them so neatly across the top, and I'm a very tidy person. So let's go ahead and select these images using Command O or Control O in order to open them all as tab documents in Photoshop. Now if you would rather float your images, you can drag out the tab in order to float it, or if you want to float them all at once, you can use the window menu and then choose arrange and then float all in windows. Now we can see that they are cascaded and they are all just floating in the image area so that I can move them around and select any one that I want. But if I open another new document by choosing File, New, we can see that if I just accept the defaults and click OK, it's going to open up that as a tab in my currently active floating window. So I have the Barren Tree and then Untitled 1 as a tab. If I wanted to float this, I could either pull it out by just clicking and dragging it away from that document, or of course I could always use Window Arrange and then I could have selected Float All in Windows. If you always want your images to float, including any new documents that you create, you can change your preferences by selecting Preference and then Workspace. I'll uncheck the option to open documents as tabs. While I'm here, I also want to disable the Enable Floating Document Window docking, and that way I'll be sure that when my images are floating, if I accidentally drop one onto another, instead of tabbing together in a floating window, they'll actually remain floating as individual documents. Go ahead and click OK, and let me demonstrate what I mean. If I select the Barren Tree and I drop it on top and try to get it to nest with any of these other layers, you'll notice that it won't actually do that. And if I do a Command N or Control N to create a new document and click OK, you'll notice that it is also floating. Now personally I want to turn these off, so I'll go back to Photoshop and then Preferences, Workspace, and I'm going to re-enable these two options and click OK, and then I'll use the keyboard shortcut that I created in the last video to consolidate all of these to tabs, that was Command Shift R, and then we can close all of the documents by choosing File and then Close All. So you can see it's quite easy to stop Photoshop from tabbing all of your open documents, but I prefer to keep them tabbed so I know exactly where each one is. Since zooming and panning around in an image is one of the most common tasks in Photoshop, there are a variety of different ways to do it. Let's start by taking a look at the Zoom tool and the Hand tool. Now I have two open documents right now. We're going to concentrate on the first image. When you open a document in Photoshop, depending on the file size, Photoshop opens it as large as it can in the image area, but it does try to keep it at sort of an even increment of the actual total file size. So in this case, this has been shown to us at 33.33%. Now, depending on the document that you open, if it's larger or smaller, this number, this zoom percentage, might actually vary. Alright, let's access the zoom tool. Probably the quickest way to do that is just tap the Z key, and the zoom tool works by clicking in your image area. Every time you do a simple click, it will zoom in more and more. Now if I want to zoom out, I can either select the minus zoom tool here, or we can stay with the regular zoom tool. Just hold down the option key and click in order to zoom back out. Another way that you can zoom is, you can click and hold over the area that you want to zoom into, and Photoshop will continuously zoom into that area. In fact, if you continue to hold and zoom in far enough, Photoshop will show you the pixel grid overlay where you can actually see each individual pixel in your image. If I want to quickly see the entire image, then I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command 0, and that's the keyboard shortcut for View, Fit on Screen. Another way that you can zoom into your image is using Scrubby Zoom, and I can click in my image and drag it to the right to quickly zoom into a specific area. If I click and drag out, then I can zoom back out on my image. Now some people turn off Scrubby Zoom. You can uncheck the option in the options bar, and then you can click and drag a marquee over the area in your image that you want to zoom into. The only drawback with this is that I'm not able to quickly zoom out to another area like I am when I use Scrubby Zoom. So I'll enable Scrubby Zoom again, and this time I'll click and drag to the left, and you can see how quickly I can zoom back out. You might also want to use the keyboard shortcut Command plus in order to zoom into your image, or Command minus to zoom out of your image. And you'll notice when you do zoom in on the right hand side as well as the bottom of the image area, you have access to scroll bars which will help you to navigate around in your image. In addition, if you go to the window menu, we have a panel called the Navigator panel, and you can use the Navigator panel to quickly move around and view different areas of your image. I'll go ahead and close that for now, but it's good to know that it's there. Another great keyboard shortcut that you'll want to know is Command 1 or Control 1 on Windows, and that enables me to zoom to 100%, and I know I'm in 100% because it says so in the lower left hand corner. And if I go under the View menu, you can see that the keyboard shortcut for 100% is Command 1. Now let's switch to the Hand tool. I'll tap the H key that automatically gives me the Hand tool, and the Hand tool allows me to pan around different areas of my image very quickly. If I click and drag with the mouse and then let go, we also have what's called flick pannings. So you'll notice that it didn't stop right away. So I'm kind of flicking the image around and it slowly stops. If you're in the middle of a flick and you want it to stop, like maybe you've accidentally flicked it too hard, you can click with the hand to stop it. So I'm going to flick to the top of the tree, but I will click again to stop it wherever I want it. If I change to another tool, so for example, if I tap the M key to select the Marquee tool and I want to temporarily access the Hand tool in order to pan around my image, I can hold down the space bar that will give me the Hand tool. And then, once I have reached the location that I want to see, I'll just release the space bar. If I want to quickly zoom in, I can hold the space bar to give me the Hand tool and then add the Command key or the Control key in order to access the Zoom tool, so that I can click and zoom in. If you do it the other way, if you hold down the Command key first and then the space bar, you'll notice that on the Mac, you get the spotlight search. So that's why I wanted to be very careful in telling you that you need to hold down the space bar first and then the Command key on Mac if you want to zoom in. If I wanted to zoom out, I could add the Option key and then click in order to zoom out of my image. I can also double click on the Zoom tool in order to quickly take my image to 100%, or I can double click on the Hand tool in order to fit it to the screen. I'm going to tile all of my images using Window, arrange, and then I'll tile them 2 up vertically. If I want to zoom or pan both images at one time, you'll notice that there's an option to scroll all windows when I have the hand tool selected, and I can zoom all windows when I have the zoom tool selected. I'll go ahead and enable that, and when I click to zoom into one image, you'll notice that both images zoom in. If I hold down the option key, both images will zoom out. If I select the hand tool and I enable scroll all windows, then both windows will be panned at the same rate. But you'll notice that I don't have them at the exact same zoom percentage, and they're not looking at the same location in each image. If I ever want to match those, I can select window and then arrange. I can match my zoom, my location, even the rotation, which we'll talk about in a moment, or I can simply select match all. Now they're at the same zoom percentage and they're looking at the same location in each document. Let me use the hand tool. I'll select this document by clicking on it, and we can see what I mean. If I move over to one of the sides, you can see that I'm looking at the upper right hand corner in both images. When I use the hand tool to scroll down, we can see that I'm now looking at the lower right area. If you don't want to leave these two options on, scroll all windows and the zoom all windows, you can toggle them off, and then to temporarily access them, if I use the zoom tool in this right hand image and hold down the shift key before I click, you'll notice that temporarily turns on the zoom all windows. And likewise, if I have the space bar held down to give me the hand tool, if I add the shift key to that, it will allow me to pan all of my open windows. Alright, let's go ahead and close one of these images here so that I just have one image open. I want to show you the rotate view tool. We can select it by tapping the R key or choosing the rotate view tool right down here underneath or nested with the hand tool. You'll notice this is one of the exceptions where two tools that are nested together actually have different keyboard shortcuts. Now what you need to know is that the rotate view tool is only going to rotate the view of your image. It's not actually rotating the pixels within the photograph. When I hold my mouse down, I get a compass that appears in the center of my image, and then I can drag to actually rotate the view of this image. Let me go ahead and zoom out. I mean to use Command 0 so that we can see the entire image, because that might make a little bit more obvious that I'm just rotating the view. I'm not actually rotating the photograph within the document. And I might want to do this because I might want to be painting on my document, or I might want to be painting in a mask. I might want to be drawing with a pen tool or making a selection, and being able to rotate the whole canvas is very much the same as when you sketch on a piece of paper and you actually rotate the piece of paper on the desk. It's just that some angles are easier to draw or paint with. If I want to reset the view, I can click on the reset view icon right here, and one last preference before I wrap up, I'm going to use Command - to zoom out on this image. But I would also like to see this image in the upper left hand corner. Even if I select the hand tool, I can't actually drag it anywhere. It's going to stay centered in the preview, unless I select my preferences and then tools and then enable the option to overscroll. Now when I click OK, you can see that I can reposition this anywhere I would want in this open area, and one of the reasons that I use this all the time is because I'm typically making screenshots that I post on my blog, so it's very convenient for me to be able to show maybe an image very small next to the panel in which I'm referring to that image. So I'll go ahead and put that back for now, and we'll return back to those preferences, select tools. I'm going to turn off overscroll, and just point out also that if you are using a mouse that has a scroll wheel, you can use that to zoom by just enabling this option here. Again, I'll turn that off, click OK. So as you can see, there are a variety of different ways to view your images using the zoom tool, the hand tool, and the rotate view tool in Photoshop. Another way to customize your image area is by changing the screen mode. By default, we are in standard screen view. However, If you click on the icon at the bottom of the toolbar, you notice that there are two other modes. There's full screen mode with menu bar and full screen mode. If I tap the F key again, I go into full screen mode without the menu bars, and this is excellent for presentations because it hides not only the menus but also of course your tools and the panels. Now if I tap the tab key, I can bring back my tools in the options in all of the panels, and then if I want to hide them again, I can tap the tab key again. If I want to go into the normal or standard screen view from the full screen view, there are two ways. If you ever want to turn that off, you'll select your preferences and then interface, and you'll notice that I can change the drop shadow, the border in this case, for not only standard screen mode but also full screen mode with menus. So I'm gonna change it from drop shadow to none and do the same for full screen with menus. The full screen by default is set to none, but I just want to point out that you can also change the full screen background color to whatever color you want. For now we'll leave it at black. Click OK, and I can no longer see that drop shadow around my image.